you want to get into it, mate, with your first winner of the week?
Let's go, mate. My first winner of the week is the G-Men. Purely because for the first time they're top of the NFC East with a pretty average win over the Bengals. It has to be said, but Danny Jones did go down injured in the third quarter, I believe. But either way, good win, and now they're in pole position, in my opinion, to take out the NFC East.
Yeah, they are. They are the favourites to take it out now. The
Really?
prediction model that I don't know
Oh
about
yeah,
the betting markets, but the prediction model I like to look at 538 for those interested. That's the website name. Yeah, they have the Giants at 35% chance of winning the division now. So
and
yeah, that's an interesting one.
what's the football team at?
I think they're 27. The Eagles are 23, and the Cowboys are 10%. And because we're actually no, I'll talk about the Cowboys next. They're my first loser, but the Giants. Do you think they could, if they do get there? Do you think they could win a game in the playoffs, or do you think
No.
they'll get?
Well, nah. Like very unlikely. They do have a good defense though.
Yeah, I don't think they would get smashed. I think, yeah, I think most of the teams, even though it's a pretty bad division, the Eagles, Washington, and the Giants, they all have solid defenses, if not good defenses. So I don't think there would be like a 40-point blowout or anything. Don't think it would be an
Yeah.
embarrassing loss to whoever gets there. But yeah, going to be interesting to see how they go. Hopefully, Daniel Jones's hamstring's all right because it's a very tight race, so you don't want him to miss any time at all, even if it is just 1 week. So that's going to be big to see how he pulls up from that injury. But yeah, definitely a good win from the Giants, even though it was just scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of beating a Joe Burrowless Bengals. But a win's a win in that division, and you take what you get. So yeah,
Indeed.
they're well and truly on their way to it. And actually, no. We'll start with my. Oh no, Washington are my winner. I'll forget that. I was going to put them in my winners, but I think I had them last week, so I thought I'd leave them out this week. But another team that was in my winners last week, but are now my losers, the Dallas Cowboys, in the exact same division as the New York Giants, vying out for that NFC title. But they got pumped and dumped by the Washington football team. They got absolutely destroyed on Thanksgiving Thursday night football. In the space of a week, they went from NFC East contenders to outside chances. Everyone was up and about after their win against the Vikings, thought they'd turned the corner, including myself. I had them in my playoff bracket last week, and now that model I mentioned before says they're only at a 10% chance. So well and truly a long way off, according to them. And yeah, I can't really disagree with them there. Washington absolutely destroyed them on the ground, ran for 182 yards, which is pretty much the exact same thing as what they did last time. So interesting that they let it happen again. Like, I know it's not something you can really fix in the short term if your run defense is no good, but yeah, disappointing from Dallas that they couldn't at least put up a bit better fight this time. But Washington's defensive front, led by Chase Young and Montez Sweat, and their run game, it's just really not a good matchup for the Cowboys. So that probably explains the Washington sweep in this series. But yeah, pretty poor from the Cowboys. They're going to have to beat the Eagles and the Giants, I reckon, to stand a chance at this stage. And that's probably not looking likely unless they produce an upset against the Ravens or 49ers, because they're going to have to get their wins from somewhere, and there's not many weeks to go now. So yeah, for me, the Cowboys are the biggest loser, the most clear cut, because they've now left my playoff bracket by a pretty long way. So they're my first loser of the week.
Yeah.
Do you have any other NFC East teams to talk about, or do you want to start with the new winner?
No, well, the Cowboys were also my biggest losers of the week as well.
Yeah.
So I'll move on to my second winner, and that is the Titans with an absolute mammoth win against the Colts in the division. And for me, that's put them right into the Super Bowl contention and the third seed in the NFC. I reckon huge staple win. Derrick Henry looked absolutely unstoppable. And as they say, post Thanksgiving is Derrick Henry season. I think after Thanksgiving last year, he was putting up 200 yards a game, and he's probably going to do the exact same this year. So look out for the Titans.
Yeah, they're my biggest winner of the week as well. Do you reckon they are, if they finish in the third seed behind the Chiefs and the Steelers, do you reckon they would be the third favourite to win the Super Bowl? Like, do you think that low of the NFC teams, or are you not quite?
No, I reckon they'll be fourth. I reckon they'll put the one seed of the NFC just because
Yeah,
they get a bye and all that.
yeah, that is true. But yeah, pump the Colts, which is pretty impressive considering only 2 weeks ago they got pumped by the Colts. And yeah, putting up 45 points against what is rumored to be one of the best defenses in the league. Stats actually kind of argue with that, but Derrick Henry, AJ Brown, Ryan Tannehill all smashed it, contributed to the 6 touchdowns, all between them, with Tanner's running in one. And they have taken the lead over the Colts in that division. And I was looking at their remaining stretches, and the Titans is far easier than the Colts. So they're kind of
Yeah,
looking unstoppable, but the Titans this year, every second week they look unstoppable, and then in the off weeks they lose a weird game. So
that's
um,
true.
maybe don't quite put them up into the Chiefs Steelers conversation just yet, but definitely putting up performances worthy to be in that conversation. So
Do you
yeah,
reckon?
huge win from the Titans.
Who do you reckon? Do you reckon the Titans this year are better than the Titans last year? That's a tough
I
one
think,
because they had a better defense last year. I seem to remember,
yeah,
but I
I think
think
they're actually a better team, but like last year they just got hot. So I
at the
reckon at
end,
the point of playoffs in last year they were probably just better, but I think overall this team's probably actually better. Just with
yeah,
like, but yeah, I
they've
don't know.
definitely their offense has definitely improved. I reckon.
Yeah, yeah, but as you said, the defense probably needs to get a little bit closer to what it was last year if they're
Yeah,
gonna challenge for the Super Bowl. But yeah, the Colts, they're not worthy of being a loser just for me. But my next winner, I'm huge on this team after this week, but I'll talk about them all throughout the episode in pretty much every section. But the 49ers, they beat the Red Hot Rams. They are my second winner of the week behind the Titans. Their offense just looked rejuvenated with all the injured players returning. Mullins, Mostert and Jeff Wilson came back, as well as Debo Samuel, all had great games. Mullins is starting to steer the ship fairly solidly, even though he didn't have ridiculous numbers on the weekend. To think about the fact that it was against the Rams makes it look like a pretty good performance from him. Their defense is improving week after week as players who probably weren't expecting much time because of depth chart are now starting to get used to their role as starters due to injuries to like Nick Bosa and stuff. Richard Sherman also returned, and he played really well, mainly tagging Cooper Cup out of the game. Also, I think he might have had an interception. I'm not 100% sure, but they're back into the wild card picture for me this week. Every time they get a player back from injury, they look even better. So they're currently fourth in the wild card picture, so just sitting out of the three. However, I do have to say there are still some rumors that they are going to add an eighth wild card, like an eighth spot in the playoffs, so a fourth wild card, because they want to allow for teams that have like been dogged by COVID if they have to push more games back and stuff like that. But for now, we'll treat it as if there's only three wild cards. But yeah, they have an easier schedule than the Cardinals as well, who are likely going to be their main competitors in terms of that third wild card spot, because we would probably assume that the Rams and the Bucks are going to take out the fifth and the sixth if they don't win their divisions. So
yep.
yeah, at the moment, the 49ers looking like they're going to take it over the Colts. How big on are you on the 49ers, or do you think this was just a fluke win?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And they're starting to get players back. I think George Kittle might only be like 2 weeks away, apparently. If
Yeah,
not, they're saying he's probably definitely going to play at least 2 games. So if they make the playoffs, I reckon they'll actually be a threat. But yeah,
yeah,
that ties into my other loser, which is the Cardinals.
yeah.
Bit of a
I agree.
shock loss, shock upset by the Patriots, and that loss has hurt them a lot because the Niners beat the Rams. So yeah, the Cardinals, I'd probably have them fourth as well going forward in that
Yeah,
division.
yeah. It's pretty outrageous how quickly the tide has turned in that NFC West.
Yeah,
Like 2 weeks ago, we would have been ruling out the 49ers. Had huge questions over the Seahawks, and now pretty much everyone has the Seahawks locked in to win the division, and people are starting to say the Cardinals might not even make it, which we'll talk about later in our predicted playoff bracket. But yeah, pretty disgusting loss to the Patriots. Like they're starting to gather quite a few scalps, the Patriots this year, but I don't know if it's because they're playing great football. I think it might just be a bit of a coincidence that they've come up against some sides playing bad football against them, if I'm honest. But yeah, it looks like Kyler Murray's shoulder injury is really hampering the team. I talked about it last
True.
week, but he only had 5 rushes, as he did last week, and that is his lowest amount of carries in a game all season. He's been having like 12, 11, 8 carries a game and back to back weeks of 5. So it definitely looks like, unless it's just a fluke, it does look like they are worried about his shoulder and him getting hit. So he's going to be running less, which all of a sudden, yes, he's a competent quarterback in the air, but he's nothing. He's not an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes. So all of a sudden, their ability on offense really like diminishes. So they've
Yep.
also had their as well as those low rush tallies from Kyler, they've also had their 2 lowest point totals of the season in the last fortnight. So they scored 21 against the Seahawks and then 17 against the Patriots. And out of all the NFC wildcard candidates, so across all the divisions, they have the hardest remaining schedule. So yeah, it's not looking good for the Cardinals at the moment. A lot of just bad juju has been coming their way in the last 2 weeks. So yeah, it's pretty funny how quickly the tide has turned, but all of a sudden they're not looking too good for the playoffs anymore after looking like genuine chances to win the division. So yeah, I'm not willing to rule them out just yet, but huge danger signs in Arizona. So
Yep.
yeah, not looking good for them. So I agree with you there that they are a big loser. My final winner is a bit of a dual thing, but it's the interim coaches. They've actually, I think they've been going under the radar. So this is Raheem Morris, the Atlanta Falcons coach, and Romeo Crennel of Houston. They've actually been doing pretty well since they've taken over their jobs. So we'll start with Atlanta, who had a massive 43-6 win over the Las Vegas Raiders. Probably shock of the week, I'd say, next to that Patriots victory over the Cardinals. So
Yep.
Morris came in when the Falcons were 0-5 after Dan Quinn got them off to a great start. And then since then, they've gone 4-2, including the win that I just mentioned before on Sunday. Their only 2 losses have come to the Saints, which is fair, great team, and the Lions, the game where Gurley fell into the end zone and they lost by 1 point. So they are basically a minute away from being 5-1 over their last 6. They do have a very tough run home. They play the Saints, the Chiefs, and the Bucks twice. So I
Yep.
think they've got the hardest schedule remaining out of the whole competition. But I think going into next year, I think we've got to remember this 6 year stretch, this 6 week stretch after Dan Quinn came, because I don't think their record's going to look too good at the end of the year. They're only sitting at 4 wins right now, and they're going to be lucky to scrape more than 1 win going forward. But I think we do have to remember this impressive 6 week stretch when we consider next year, because they've actually been pretty surprising. They held the Raiders to 6 points, and their defense has actually started to become pretty good. They're known to be one of the worst secondaries in the league, but overall, their pass defense is starting to turn it around. They are now in the top 10 since the start of November, in terms of pass defense. So they've gone from, I think, since the start of October, they were third worst. But if you take out October, they're actually in the top half, in the top 10 even. And in that time, they have averaged the 5th least points conceded in the whole league, assuming the Ravens don't concede like a bulk amount of points to the Steelers or something. So yeah, and then in terms of offense, they put up 43 points without over relying on the passing game, which is usually something. If as we were talking about the other day, if we woke up to the 43-6 scoreline, we're expecting 400 yards from Matt Ryan and
Yep.
three touchdowns from Calvin Ridley, but they really shared it around this week. They had 125 yards on the ground, and that was without Todd Gurley. So that's maybe something to look at going forward. And Ryan only got sacked once, which was pretty impressive given that he's been sacked 27 times over the previous 10 weeks and their O-line has been struggling. So it looks like they're starting to turn it around in all aspects of their game. Julio was missing as well as Todd Gurley. and Matt Ryan isn't playing the greatest football of his career. So I don't think it's all bad signs in Atlanta. Yeah, you're a big Atlanta fan. Do you think they're a
Yeah.
chance to bounce back next year, or do you think it's time
Um,
to rebuild, maybe get rid of Matt Ryan, bring in a new quarterback, or what do you reckon?
yeah, it's a tough one because coming into this year, they sort of did a similar thing last year for the second half where they
Yeah,
went
that's
on a bit
true,
of a
actually.
run,
Yeah,
and then people were pretty high on them at the start of this year, and they went 0-5 to start off the year. But there's always been potential there. Like they have an elite offense on paper, um, and it's mainly been their defense. But I mean, if they can sort out their defense, they might be a sniff next year.
yeah, I agree. I probably wouldn't get rid of Matt Ryan. There's like rumors of him. Well, not really rumors, but people were saying like maybe Chicago should have a crack at him or something like that. But I think he should stay because although they have a great team on paper, like it's not necessarily a young team.
Yeah,
With
and
Julio,
Julio, I'm worried about Julio. His hamstring just keeps playing up every 2 weeks. He's getting pretty old now, so his days might be numbered.
yeah, and if they continue to strengthen that defense, if they can get it 1 or 2 more years out of this offense, and maybe add a few pieces to the O line, they could
Yeah,
bounce back next year in a serious way, and all of a sudden be playoff contenders yet again,
yeah,
despite being in a pretty tough division. But yeah, I reckon things are on the up in Atlanta. And then on the other side of that coin, we had the LV Raiders. I almost said the LA Raiders. They had an absolute shocker, didn't they?
yeah.
Like I'm not really. I wasn't really covering this result when I woke up.
I know.
Derek Carr had 4 turnovers, and Jacobs pitched in with one. Thought he would chop out for the boys. Um, and yeah, I thought this was an absolute gimme for the Raiders.
Same.
I think we talked about it last week as one of our
Yeah,
sure bets of the week, but they've still got an easy remaining schedule. I think it's the easiest in the competition next to the Browns, or maybe the Browns are the 31st and they're the easiest. But given the fact that they were pretty high after a great shootout with the Chiefs, it's pretty disheartening to come out and get absolutely smacked by a pretty poor, like I know we've just been gassing them up, but a team that was capable of an 0-5 start.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, 5 turnovers, not on. It's Derek Carr. You expect him to be a safe, secure quarterback, and that's not good enough from him. They are still well and truly in the wild card mix, but with the Bills, Browns, Dolphins, and Titans all getting up on the weekend, I think it was a pretty horrible week for the Raiders. Um, so yeah, not too
yeah.
happy
I couldn't
in
believe
any
that
way.
result because last week Derek Carr looked beast against the
I
Chiefs,
know.
and they almost got up. So yeah, the NFL is weird sometimes.
Yeah, definitely shock of the week. And then to finish my point on the interim coaches, I'll quickly touch on Houston. Not that much of a winner this week, to be fair. It was a pretty irrelevant game against the Lions, the early Thanksgiving kickoff. But Romeo Crennel came in to the head coaching role similar to Raheem Morris. They were 0-4 under Bill O'Brien. Since then, they've gone 4-3, and their losses have come to the Titans in overtime, the Packers, and the Browns in that game where no one could throw the ball more than 10 meters. They've had the fifth hardest strength of schedule all year, and they beat the Lions in a blowout, as I mentioned on Thanksgiving. A few late scores also kind of padded the score for the Lions a bit. It was a lot of a larger deficit than it looked, but yeah, their offense is absolutely killing it at the moment. Also, obviously, pretty horrible news. Not in terms of like I feel bad for him, but like it's pretty shit to hear that Will Fuller was on the juice all season. But
And
I
Bradley Roby, the
oh,
best corner,
oh,
exact same thing. Apparently, 6 weeks.
the fellas were not seeing the right people, or they were sharing it around in the locker room. Who knows? But more importantly, Deshaun Watson is playing pretty beast footy. So,
Yeah,
as long as you've got a quarterback that's top 5 in the league, you can always play some pretty good football if you can build a good team around it. But
yeah,
yeah, that's
he's a
not
god.
ideal to hear from Will Fuller and Bradley Roby. So you guys are fuckwits. Do you believe that it was their doctor's mistake, or do you reckon that's just an excuse everyone makes? Because that seems to be 80% of the doping cases nowadays.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna say either way.
Yeah, like I can see how it would happen because it's just like you probably wouldn't even think about it really unless it was
Yeah,
like a blatant drug that you were taking. But yeah, Anyway, do you have any other winners you want to mention, or
No, I brought two winners, two losers.
have we touched on all of them?
Already rinsed them.
Beautiful.
Queensland! It's a miracle! Oh, yeah! What about that one? Unbelievable! Balotelli! Aguero! Crowd cheers. Here's Siddle.